Hey everyone. So hopefully most of you are backing up your Windows desktops, your Windows laptops, and you're protecting your data somehow today. But so what I wanted to show was actually something that we probably haven't shouted about quite enough most recently is around the Veeam backup, our Veeam Agent backup for Windows, for workstations. We probably tend to talk about our agents more in line with protecting physical systems. So the first thing that I want to really call out is this community edition. So the free version. What can we do with that? And I'll show you what it is and how we can get up and running with that. Ultimately, download this, and you've got a way of being able to protect your Windows machine to another media type. So obviously don't back it up to itself because that won't be too much help. Put it to a USB device or drive, or there's some other options that again we'll get through. So first of all, this is where you start. Now, if you're a vExpert or you're within, I think the MVPs, I think there's quite a few different. There's a few different advocacy programs. I'll put a link to the community edition down below, but also the NFR version. So I know vExperts, they get 20 instances that allow you to play with all of our products. And the big plug here is that, well, really, all of our products have a community edition, really aiming at the IT professional and their labs and being able to just have some sort of protection of those workloads. But the focus today is on Veeam Agent for Microsoft Windows, and mostly focusing on the workstation. So the ability to protect your Windows 10 machine and having a backup of that. So I've already downloaded it. I've already got it installed. I'd probably get some grief if I didn't have a backup, given who I work for. So once you've installed it, again, in a very Veeam centric way, it's very easy to install. Now I'm using NFR here, so you'll see some things that I get that you don't in the free or the community edition. Namely, things like being able to send backups to Cloud Connect, which is our service provider offering, but also some others. But I'll get through to that. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm sending it to a Veeam backup and replication server, which I have in my garage in my lab. But again, irrelevant to that. So when you first spin up Veeam backup, well, the Veeam agent, then this is what it'll look like in terms of configuring a job. So you have to give it a name, and those familiar with Veeam backup and replication, this wizard-driven approach should look very familiar. So give it a name. Now, backup mode, we need to choose what we want to do. So whether you want to do the entire computer, so that's going to obviously back up the operating system, but all of the data as well. You can say to include external USB drives if you're running your data from that. If you don't need the operating system, then we can go down to volume level, and then we could even go down to file level backup if there's particular files that we absolutely must protect. So these are your three options. Entire computer is obviously the recommended, because if anything bad happens to that hardware, that computer gets corrupted in any way, then we've got a complete backup that we can do bare metal recovery with onto another machine or back to the same hardware. Next up, this is where it might look a bit different if you're using the free edition. So we could back it up to local storage. So this is where I'm talking about a USB drive or something connected to the machine. Don't back up to your D drive or a drive that's within the same hardware, unless you're going to copy that off to somewhere else. Because if you lose that access to that operating system, that this data that you're on, then you're not going to be able to recover anything from that. Ideally, you'll send it to a shared folder, so a shared NAS device if you've got one. I've got a ready NAS here from Netgear that I also send some backups to as well. If you're fortunate enough to have that, then great. in this instance, I'm sending it to a Veeam backup repository. I might be able to, it might be worth showing that as well, especially for any of the vExperts or the community out there. That might be useful to see. Now, the one that I don't believe you'll see is this Veeam Cloud Connect repository. So what Veeam Cloud Connect is our service providers, our VCSPs, they offer a backup as a service offering, and this allows you to back up directly to a service provider repository. So you pay for X amount of gig or X amount of terabytes, and they just host that backup file for you. Now, the other interesting one is around Microsoft OneDrive. So I mentioned about not putting it to your local storage, but actually putting it to your local storage and then letting it seed up into OneDrive is quite an additional benefit, because that's going to keep you a local copy on the machine for any file level recovery that you may wish to or need to do. But it's also going to send that complete backup file into OneDrive, so you can access that from anywhere else. That's OneDrive as in personal, but it's also OneDrive for business as well. So, and when you click these, they give you the different options you'll see. So local storage gives you those options down the left-hand side. Shared folder gives you a few more. Veeam Backup Repository, a few more. Veeam Cloud Connect, etc. So I'll leave it as what it was. I'm sending it to a VBR server. Again, we'll jump onto that. I just got to remember not to commit it. I'm sending it to a particular backup repository that I have. I've only got one up there that's available. I'm keeping 7 restore points. So that's going to take a full backup on day 1. And then it's going to be incrementals for the next 6 days. And then it's just going to incrementally add the older incrementals to the full. So we're ultimately not going to have to take the synthetic full. Now, if we did want to take active fulls or synthetic fulls, we hit advanced, we go in here, we can check and we can say when we want that to happen, if we want that to happen. Things like health checks and backup maintenance and making sure things are all good on the backup files as well. And what level of compression and dedupe do you want to run on there? Again, I've just kept the defaults. Now, interesting for you laptop users out there, and again, I can't remember if this is in the free edition, but it should be in the NFR, so people should get this if you're a vExpert in the community, is the backup cache. Now think about this on a laptop. I don't have this enabled. My desktop PC stays exactly where it is in my office all the time, but on my laptop I have this enabled, and this carves out a chunk of space on your local disk to store any increment changes where you're not connected to your backup destination. So if that's a shared folder, if that's a Veeam backup repository, etc., then this gives you the ability to still be able to back up, or at least have that increment on the system, so that when you come home and you reconnect to your network or back into the office, it then syncs up and you'll have that incremental into your backup repository, so you don't just lose the incremental changes from the last backups. Now, this is the ability that you have with the server edition. So if this was a physical SQL box or a physical Exchange box, then we can enable application aware processing. I generally don't need that on this system. And then finally, we've got the schedule. When do you want it to run? And all of that good stuff in there around the backup window. Then a summary, and off it goes. And then from there, what we've also got is our restore function. So whether it's individual files or entire volumes. If we go into the control panel, you can see everything that we've got going on. I also configured notifications just using an app password with my personal outlook.com address. You can also throttle backup activity when the system is busy, so I can afford to take a backup during the day if need be. The other thing, the other thing is around recovery media. So if this machine was to completely die, then we would want or need to be able to boot off this ISO image, which would contain all of the drivers that we need for that machine to come up, but then also give you the ability to go and look for that Veeam backup to then restore, do a bare metal recovery from, because we don't have the agent installed on a system that potentially where your hard drive has died, there's no agent installed. So running this little media, this recovery media wizard gives you the ability to create an ISO file. You obviously dump that in a place where it's going to be accessible, potentially put that into the same path that you're sending your backups to, that same USB drive or NAS share. So I'm putting it in there, and then that creates that. So if we then go and quickly jump over to my VBR server, for those that will be running this in like maybe a home lab configuration, you'll see here, this is that server. So we can see when it last ran. You can see that these are just incrementals. If we jump down into the backup drive, we can see under here, so this is our full backup. So on day one, we're going to take a full backup, 633 gig or 600 around there. And then after that, we've got these incrementals, and we've also got this metadata. You could literally pick these up and open these on any Veeam server because they're not encrypted, but they give us the ability, that portable data format that you've probably heard me talk about hundreds of times in different videos. But also from here, I can see what's happening from all of those jobs. You can see what the change rate looks like in terms of what's changing. And obviously this is only if you're pushing this to a Veeam backup replication. You still get the same report. So if you set up that email notification, this is what I get on a daily basis. Hopefully always green, because that tells me that it's a success. But obviously there's warnings, there's errors, and that will give you the details around that. You can see all of the, there we go, there's an error there when it first started, and shows what it was. Most likely in my home lab, it was probably networking. But this will give you a good understanding about what all of those backups did. Now, when it comes to recovery in here, again, we can jump down into agents. We can take that machine. Now, we can do an instant VM recovery of that physical Windows desktop, and we can send that to Hyper-V, and we can send that to vSphere. Which is quite, if you think about, like, so I have a physical server in my garage that is basically running Windows 2019. It's full of hard drives, full of capacity that I can use just as a dedicated Veeam backup and replication server for tinkering around, but for lab work. But this also runs as a Hyper-V host. It doesn't run too much. There's a small little Kubernetes cluster for education, and I'm also running some other workloads just for testing like new beta alpha software on. But I could, in theory, if I lost my desktop today, I could run instant VM recovery and have that spin up on that Hyper-V host and access that from a laptop or from that machine. I can get into it. Obviously, we can do volume restores. So I've got an operating system disk, but I store all my data on a D or an E drive. So I can do I can recover an individual volume. We can export the disks as virtual disks, so a VHD file, and then attach that to an existing Windows machine. We can do restore guest files. So this will bring up our Veeam Explorer type functionality, our file level recovery, and we can go in and we can find individual files that we need to do. And then another important part, so let's say that physical machine completely dies, it's completely toast, it doesn't power on. Well, actually, I could restore that into an Amazon EC2 instance or Microsoft Azure, so then I can actually start working from a remote desktop that's hosted in Azure while I figure out what is going on with the physical system. All of them are pretty powerful things. Now, if it was a server of the agent as well, then we would have application item level recovery here as well, using our Veeam Explorers. If it was a SQL box, we'd have Veeam Explorer for SQL and all of that good stuff. But I really just want to focus on, this is free. This gives you the ability to protect your Windows desktops, laptops, your PCs ultimately that you're running at home. We know that we're all using our home machines a lot more given the current situation. And I think we should be looking after our data. We should just be looking after our data. So hopefully that was useful. If you'd like to see more about the Veeam Agent for Windows, we've also got Veeam Agent for Linux as well. So those that are using Linux as a daily driver on your laptops, on your desktops, and you again need some way of backing that up, then we can absolutely look into that as well. And I can show you that. Just let me know in the comments below. But with that, cheers guys.